Alright, y'all, I haven't been recording, but I started the destruction of the living room already. This is all the trim being pulled up from around the windows and the door, and I went ahead and pulled this closet door out because it's going to be replaced with this door. But I've got to rip up all these old vents here. They're just rusted in there. We're going to put new vents in, and we've got to take this flooring up to get the baseboard out. So it's not a beautiful ceiling, but it's work for me. I won't show it to you up close because it's a big old mess. But so what we did is we hung 3/8 inch drywall on top of the ceiling. So instead of redoing this ceiling, which was a big mess, ripping it down and or painting it or trying to take this texture off, we just did what they call overboarding, which is just putting drywall over the top of it. So still got to do that here in the kitchen, but in the living room I am done. Well, not quite done. I've still got some edging to do here. I got to do another coat over there and over here, and then I've got to do my final coat over everything once those edges are done, and then we can start painting. So we have an extra bit of paint on the wall here because this wall still has nicotine stains and stuff, so we've got to use the kills on it to seal it and then paint on top of it. And I got a lot of cleaning to do, and got stuff to put all around. I got a lot of work that we're doing here inside the house, but I promised you guys I'd give you a good update, and so I've got to get this done this week. So you'll see it more as I finish everything, and hopefully this room will look completely different. So you have to kind of forgive the mess in here, but this is the flooring that we went with. I have shown some of this before. Still got some left in here. We have not finished in here. We put some, even though we've got some wrinkles in there, but so this is the color that we went with, and it's just a white ceiling. There's definitely some repainting that needs to be done around these edges, and our door has not been painted yet, but these are our cool doorknobs that Amy got for us. Very old school. We actually had these doorknobs in the house growing up, and they had skeleton keys on them. Everything's expensive right now, so some of this stuff's on hold. Luckily, we bought a bunch of this stuff ahead of time. We bought the flooring, we bought the doors, all the doors. We just went ahead and bought them all. And so we've got that, and we've got paint, and we can paint, and so we can clean up as much as we can. The trim on the windows is going to have to be done at a different time. We're waiting for prices to drop a little bit if we can. So we got this door in for our cellar downstairs. Just nice. We got what will be my office that is now our junk and tool and everything else station. And we got a door on there. Need to do some sanding here to clean this up. We haven't painted any of the doors yet. Not really 100% sure what color we're going to paint. We have stained and sealed the hallway, so that's done. And I still have some drywall to do here over these things, so I'm just kind of holding off to put new drywall up here so that we can finish the hallway. So we put our pantry closet in, and we ripped up some floor here to do that and realized that there's some old laminate underneath it. So nice beehive color. But all this floor gets to be ripped up. Super fun. Actually, that is kind of the fun part. The demolition part is more fun, most definitely, than doing any kind of drywall. Any issues you see where you've got uneven areas. All that's solvable with a little bit of mud. So I'll do wet sanding as well. So instead of just doing sandpaper and just creating a mess of dust, you basically take a sponge and you get it damp, and then you go over it with a sponge until it's even. That has no dust mess, super clean, and I think it actually smooths it out a little bit better. But mostly I'm doing that for the cleanliness part. It makes it a whole lot easier to do. There's not much that can't be covered up with a little bit more mud. Really all you're doing, and again, I'm no professional, so don't take my advice on any of this stuff and say, oh, this is how you would do this job, because it isn't necessarily how you do this job. But it's what I learned and what I did, and I'm sure there's a billion better ways to do this, and you should use something different. Everyone's got an opinion. That out of the way. So I did stagger the joints, which is pretty important. There are 24-inch on center beams on the ceiling, which kind of helps you find studs. But the best thing to do, especially if you just have a wall and you don't have drywall above it, it makes it a lot easier because you can see the stud as you're putting it up. But when you have drywall up already and you're overboarding, it's really hard to find the studs sometimes, because they do sometimes, warp out or bend, not to that extreme, but just a little bit. And if you're barely off center, you might miss them and get a little frustrated. Try not to, even though you will. You'll find it eventually. But what I do to help with that is I actually put up here a little bit of tape up there that I can remove later to, when I found the studs. But I took a little small screwdriver and just started poking it through until I found it. And then once you find one, you can get the general idea, because it's either usually 16 or 24 inches on center of the beams across the ceiling. So once you've got that, it makes it a lot easier. One thing you do not want to do, which I did stupidly in the beginning, it seems like it'd be obvious, but it's not necessarily obvious. You want to make sure that your drywall ends in the middle of the last beam. If you just take a whole sheet and put it right here, the distance between this beam and that wall might be different than the difference between this beam and this beam. And a lot of times that's the case, because this is like 19.5 inches. So if I put that up here and I just did one sheet all the way across, I'd end either short or on the other side of this beam by an amount. And once you've got it up there, cutting it and trying to rip it down is near impossible. You will not get it straight. You'll hate your life because you'll have to do a lot of mud fixing. So make sure you measure before and cut before you put drywall up. Don't just think it's going to match. It's hard the first time you've ever done it. I've never done drywall before. Well, I've done some on a wall, but I've never done it on a ceiling. And it's just different, because it's once you get it up there, it's really hard to make a change. Some people may suggest that you go ahead and rip all that old stuff down. You can, and that's probably the best way to do it, is to just rip it all down and start from scratch. You would need to use a little bit thicker drywall, so it might be a tiny bit more expensive, but it's really not that much more. You do run into risk of just the dust. I mean, I don't know what your ceilings are made of too. There might be some asbestos up there, so sometimes you just kind of cover it up. Really all you're trying to do is make it look square, and so look like there's an edge. And for these things, all you're really doing is spreading out your mistakes. As I go put another coat on this, I'm going to expand it out even further here, and so it basically will spread any inconsistencies in maybe the height of this board versus this board out, so that you won't be able to notice it. So that's mostly what you're doing there, is just trying to make it look like one big flat board. Now, I did hear that some people do this. I didn't do it, and it's probably a really good idea, but it's to actually cut angles on your butt joints. So your butt joints are where the back end of the sheetrock, where it's at its max thickness, and it's just kind of a factory cut. Kind of to explain here, this is, you know, a pre-made edge here where it actually gets smaller than the thickest part here. And that is for taping and mudding. So you've got a space for mud here and the tape on top so that this will be more level. But at the end, it's just cut. So it is the thickness of the board all the way down. And so when you put these edges together, and you always want to make sure you put these edges to the same edge on the other side, you don't want to put one of those edges to these if you can help it. I mean, I'm sure you can make it work, but some people will cut 45-degree angles off of this so they can backfill it and just make it a little bit better. And if you're doing it yourself, or even with somebody else, I don't care, get one of these. This cost me, I think, 150 bucks to buy. That's worth it. If you're doing any of this work yourself, you definitely need one of these guys. Basically, it's not set up perfectly right now, but it's got these little hooks out. So you can lower it down and put your drywall sheet on here. And then when you're ready, you flip it up. It's flat. And then you take this little wheel here and it hoists it up to the ceiling. That way you can put your screws on. And I still got some screws left to put in here. But you can put your screws on, hold it up there without having to try to put it on top of your head or some weird ladder configuration, which is totally unsafe. So this thing has a good brake on it. So you basically, with this is down, it's not spinning, but you just roll that up and it raises that up. And then I'm not going to do this with my hands because you need both hands, but you should hold on to this wheel and then lift up on this a little bit and then guide it down. You don't want to just lift that up because it'll fall straight down, and there's no catch system on this one. So, all right, I'm going to get back to it, and we'll catch you guys when it's closer to being done.